Welcome back to Historic Investments. Today we're going to take a look at the Walther number 6. It might not have the glamour of a Walther PPK party leader or a 0 Series P38, but nevertheless it's one of the rarest Walther pistols extant, and if you're a Walther collector, it's something that you'll probably want to add to your stash. In any event, let's take a look and give you some tips that might help you with your collecting interest. Let's take a quick overview of just a few of the more commonly encountered Walther pistols. And again, if you like what you see, please hit the like, subscribe. We'd appreciate your comments. But in any event, here we go. On your left, you'll see a Walther PPK. On your far right is a mid-war P38. One of the things that most collectors already know is that these two guns were finished with a salt blue. Not so the Walther Model 6. The Model 6 was one of Walther's 9 pistols. All the others were pocket pistols. A lot of the number 4s and .32 caliber were military acceptance, but in 1915, Walther decided that it wanted to make a large 9mm pistol, possibly to compete against the Luger and get a military contract. So they enlarged the model number 4. There's a lot more information as related by Ian McCullum, Forgotten Weapons, so we won't go there. Let's just say about 1,000 Walther Model 6s were made, which were giant Model 4s, but they were finished in the same way. These are all rust-blued guns. They should appear as a soft, kind of a gray, with a grayish blue finish, and distinctly different from either the Walther PPK, which early in the war were highly polished with a bright salt blue. Later on, they've got a milled finish, but they're still a salt-blued gun, or all of the Walther P38s. As was true for all the pistols made during World War I, and let me emphasize, all the pistols, they were all finished with a rust blue. And the reason was salt blue wasn't developed until about 1937. So you should become familiar with the tonality of the blue and the fact that it's got kind of a soft gray, bluish matte finish. And if you look at it carefully, there are also always some undertones of brown. All the Walther Model 6s, regardless of where they were made in production, were all marked the same way. They all have a single line address on the left side of the slide surmounting the Walther banner. The safety is marked with an F in just the fire position. You can see there's no safety marking whatsoever. The right side of the gun is marked Karl Walther, Waffenfabrik Zelamelis, and here's the serial number. A couple of little tips that you should look for. Again, first of all is the color. If it's a jet black, wrong color. You don't even need to look at the smaller details. But let's take a look at some of the details. All the markings on the gun, were applied before the pistol was finished. So they should just be perfectly flat with very sharp edges. What about on the other side? Well, I get questions all the time about the serial number. Interestingly, all the Walther Model 6 serial numbers were applied on the right upper trigger guard web, and they're very, very light. So people who are inexperienced might say, hey, wasn't this gun refinished? Look, I can hardly read the serial number. That's normal. That's not the right place to look. What you should be looking for are the proof marks, because the proof marks were applied after the pistol was finished. So at this point, let's zoom in and take a look at the crown end proofs. The Model 6s were always proofed in 3 locations: on the exposed portion of the barrel hood, the right side of the slide, and the right side of the frame. You shouldn't pay too much attention to the right side of the barrel hood. These proofs are always, frequently partially washed out. These are the 2 proofs that you should really pay attention to because they were marked after the gun was finished. So if you look really, really carefully, there should be a little bit of cratering around the markings in both of these areas. Even if it was a light proof and you don't see the cratering, that doesn't mean it's wrong. But if you see it, the edges are soft or that they're dished out, that would be a really bad sign. I always get questioned about serial numbers. Does the gun have matching serial numbers? Well, for the Walther Model 6, that question is exceptionally easy to answer. It's not like a Luger or C96. There are only 2 areas you need to look for in the serial number. We talked about the serial number on the right side of the trigger guard web, which, yes, again, tends to be very thin and faintly marked. There's only one other serial number on the gun, and that's on the inner portion of the slide. So let's see if we could take this back and move the slide back and see it right there. I don't know if you guys can see it. It is right there. There it is, 785. So it is a matching number. And so we know that this gun is a fully matched Walther Model 6. Again, let me repeat, There are no serial numbers on the barrel bushing. There are no serial numbers on either of the grip panels, and there's no serial number on the magazine, which has 8 indicator holes that correspond to the 8 loaded cartridges, but have an unmarked base. The next thing you should take a look at are the fire blued parts, because people just can't help themselves. They just love to touch these areas up. The fire blued parts are much more fragile than the rust blued finished areas, and they're often subject to frictional wear. So there are only 3 fire blued parts on the Walther Model 6. There's the extractor and each of the 2 grip screws. A couple of things about the extractors: they were prone to breakage, and replacements sometimes don't have quite the right contour. So if you look very, very carefully at this extractor, see it's got kind of a flattened surface. An original extractor would have a bit of a rounded surface, so this very possibly is not the original extractor. Another thing that kind of underscores that suggestion is if you look at the pin right here that's responsible for keeping that extractor in place, you can see kind of some fresh swirl marks right inside the hole inside the slide, and the pin here looks very fresh. So this indicator plus the change in contour suggests to me that this is probably a replaced extractor, maybe a period replacement, or one that's just been aged exceptionally well. The other thing that you look for are each of the 2 grip screws, and usually just by virtue of where your hand contacts the screws, usually the dome is a little bit faded both on the right and on the left grip screw. Yes, they're hidden a bit, but you can almost always see some fading there. Last, and this is in no particular order, just stand back and look at the gun in general. Does the wear make sense to you? Does it have a little bit of wear at the front part of the barrel bushing? Does it have a little bit of commensurate wear at the front part of the slide? Maybe the back part of the slide where it's holstered, a little bit of thinning or holster wear on the front strap. Do the grip panels have a commensurate amount of wear? Does everything just look right to you? Now, if you don't have much experience, that comment might not make a lot of sense, but it shouldn't just be very patchy wear. You shouldn't have a black slide and a grayish frame. You shouldn't have a lot of pits on the grip strap and no pits elsewhere on the gun. If you're interested, you can disassemble the guns, but really this particular gun does not need to be disassembled to decide whether or not it is right. Unfortunately, the Walther Model 6 was not a particularly good weapon. It's a blowback in 9 parabellum. It was not particularly durable. The military didn't look upon it fondly. It was too big for civilian use. A number of these guns were later exported and marked Germany. But by the end of 1917, Walther basically threw in the towel, but development of the Walther Model 6 had an important consequence, and that is that the frame was used to build the Walther Olympia pistols, the 1925 Olympia pistols, which had the same kind of safety and a number of transitional parts. But that's a discussion for a later time. At this point, I think I'm just going to wind things up, and hopefully you've picked up a few good tidbits which will help with your collecting. Thanks again for having watched us at Historic Investments. If you liked what you saw, please hit the like and subscribe to our channel. We'd love to hear from you. Good luck and good collecting.